I was sitting at my desk on a Tuesday evening in December of 2019, reading Father Gabriele Amorth's book, An Exorcist Tells His Story. I had owned the book for 2 years without opening it. Not because I doubted Father Amorth's credentials. The man served as the Vatican's chief exorcist for 30 years, performed over 70,000 exorcisms, and died at 91 with the full sanction of the Church behind his work. I had not opened it because I was, at that point, still carrying a specific kind of skepticism that I can only describe as the occupational hazard of 35 years in Catholic education, a wariness of what I privately called devotional dramatism. The tendency of certain kinds of Catholic content to overstate, to sensationalize, to reach for the supernatural explanation when a natural one would do. I read the first 100 pages in something like clinical detachment. Then I reached the passage. Amorth was describing a session with a possessed woman. He had asked the demon directly, as is the standard practice in the rite of exorcism, to state its name and to reveal what it feared most. The demon answered through the woman's voice in a way that Amorth noted was against its will, that it was being forced to speak by a power it could not resist. And what it said was this: "Every Hail Mary of the Rosary is a blow to my head. If Christians knew the power of the Rosary, it would be the end of me." I read that sentence 3 times. My first reaction was exactly what I would have expected of myself 2 years earlier: skepticism. This is theatrical language, constructed for dramatic effect. The account of a demon confessing its weakness reads like hagiography, not documentation. I put the book down. Then something happened that I did not expect. I could not stop thinking about the sentence, not because it was dramatic, because I had been reading in the weeks before Padre Pio's documented daily practice. The friars at San Giovanni Rotondo, not Amorth, not a devotional biographer, the actual Capuchin brothers who lived alongside him, had sworn in beatification testimony that Padre Pio prayed between 30 and 50 complete rosaries every single day. 30 to 50 rosaries. In Padre Pio's own words, recorded in friar testimony, "Some days I say 40 rosaries, some other days 50, and he did not describe this as devotion. He described it as warfare." Here was a man who fought demons physically. Brothers sleeping in adjacent cells had heard the violence in his room at night, heard the sounds of something striking against the walls, heard Padre Pio's voice praying through it, and the weapon he reached for every single time, every night for 50 years was the rosary. Padre Pio did not choose the rosary because it was traditional. He did not choose it because Mary was beloved to him, though she was. He chose it because something about this specific prayer produced a specific result in his specific battle. And the demon Amorth had interrogated 3 decades after Padre Pio's death had just explained why. "My name is Raymond. I spent 35 years teaching Catholic theology in a high school in Covington, Kentucky. For most of those years, the rosary was what I would have called a foundational Marian devotion. Important, ancient, encouraged. Something I prayed and recommended and respected. Not a weapon. The distance between what I thought the rosary was and what Padre Pio used it for. That distance is what I want to cover tonight. Because if Padre Pio understood something about this prayer that most Catholics don't, and if the enemy has, under duress, told us exactly what he understands about it, then what we do with that testimony is a decision every person watching this needs to make consciously. Stay with me here. Let me give you the forensic chain. Not one account, not one dramatic testimonial. A chain of independent evidence across 300 years, from exorcists who did not know each other, working in different countries and different centuries, arriving at the same conclusion from direct encounter with the same enemy. This is not tradition. This is forensic testimony. The first account comes from France in the early 1700s. A young girl was brought to Father Jean Amat, a Dominican priest, during a Lenten mission at a small parish. The documentation comes through Saint Louis de Montfort, who recorded the case in The Secret of the Rosary, written around 1710. Father Amat placed his rosary around the girl's neck. The demon screamed through her voice, "Take it off! Take it off! These beads are tormenting me." Notice the precision of that testimony. Not, "I dislike this prayer." Not, This is uncomfortable for me. Torment. Physical, involuntary torment, produced by the presence of the blessed beads. Dr. Amorth pressed the demon further, under the authority of the Rite. The demon, compelled to speak, identified the rosary as the specific cause, not the prayer alone, but the combined force of Mary's name, the mysteries being contemplated, and the physical presence of the blessed object. This case predates Dr. Amorth by nearly 300 years. The second account comes from Portugal, July 13th of 1917. Our Lady appeared at Fatima to 3 shepherd children, and among the specific commands she gave, in an apparition approved by the Church after rigorous canonical investigation, was this: people must pray the rosary. Not people should pray the rosary. Not the rosary is a beautiful devotion, must. And she did not appear as Our Lady of Lourdes, or Our Lady of Peace, or any of 100 other titles. She appeared specifically as Our Lady of the Rosary. I have thought about that title for a long time. Why that title? Why not Our Lady of Mercy or Our Lady of the Church? Dr. Ripperger has a precise answer. She identified herself with the weapon she was giving, not as an identity, as a command. The third account comes from Rome, spanning 1986 through 2016. 30 years of documented exorcism work by Padre Gabriele Amorth. Over 70,000 sessions. The rosary was present in every session he worked. And across those 30 years, he documented what he called a consistent pattern in demonic confession under the authority of the Rite. Demons, when compelled to speak, returned again and again to the same statement. The rosary, its specific power. The Hail Mary, in particular, the moment of the Incarnation recapitulated in the salutation of Gabriel, the moment when God entered flesh and sealed the enemy's defeat. In his book, Amorth records a demon speaking through a possessed woman, words it did not want to say. I am more afraid when you say the Madonna's name, because I am more humiliated by being beaten by a simple creature than by him. Read that carefully. Not afraid of God, more afraid of Mary. Not because God is weaker, because there is a specific quality of torment in being defeated by a creature, a human being, that exceeds in a specific way the torment of being defeated by God, who is infinitely above them. The specific pride of the demon, the sin that made Lucifer a demon, the absolute refusal to serve, the conviction of superiority, is most acutely wounded by submission to what it considers beneath it. The fourth account comes from the present day. Dr. Stephen Rossetti, exorcist professor at the Catholic University of America, active in this work right now, in this country. In his exorcist diary, entry 161, he writes with the plainness of a man recording direct experience. The demons were attacking me, so I grabbed my rosary and held it up. Instantly, the demons were undone and fled, instantly, not gradually, not after sustained prayer, instantly. 1710, de Montfort records the case in France. 1917, Our Lady appears at Fatima as Our Lady of the Rosary. 1986 through 2016, Amorth documents 30 years of demonic confession. Today, Rossetti reports the same mechanism operating identically. 300 years, 3 continents, independent witnesses. The same enemy, the same reaction, the same specific prayer. The enemy is the one providing the testimony. Now I want to explain the mechanism. The forensic chain tells us the effect. Dr. Ripperger explains the cause. And Padre Pio's practice confirms that someone in every generation has known. The first element is what Ripperger calls Mary's perfect coercive power over demons. This is not a devotional phrase. It is a theological claim rooted in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the moment after the fall when God speaks directly to the serpent. I will put enmity between you and the woman. Ripperger's analysis is precise. God did not say, I will put enmity between you and my son. He said, between you and the woman. This is a divine decree establishing, in the very structure of creation's response to sin, a specific dominion. A creature, not God, placed in direct opposition to the demonic order. A creature given a specific authority over the enemy that no other creature possesses. When the Hail Mary invokes Mary by name, it is not a request for her intercession with God. It is an invocation of the authority specifically established by God in Genesis 3, verse 15, against that enemy, in that dominion, under that decree. The demon's reaction is not a spiritual sentiment. It is a legal response to a legal authority it cannot escape. The second element is the structure of the mysteries themselves. Each mystery of the Rosary, joyful, sorrowful, glorious, luminous, meditates on a specific moment in the life of Christ, and every one of those moments is a moment of the Incarnation. God entering flesh, God suffering in flesh, God dying in flesh, God rising in flesh, God ascending. Each of those moments is the precise moment of Satan's defeat. The Incarnation sealed the enemy's doom. The cross executed it. The resurrection proved it was final. When you pray the Rosary and meditate on the mysteries, you are not remembering history in the way you remember an event from last year. You are spiritually representing the moment of the enemy's defeat, mystery by mystery, decade by decade. In Ripage's framework, this means that every full Rosary forces demonic entities spiritually present to re-experience their own defeat, to inhabit again the moment when everything they had claimed was permanently taken from them. Think about what that means for Padre Pio. 30 to 50 full rosaries per day, 30 to 50 repetitions of the Incarnation, the Passion, the Resurrection, 30 to 50 representations of the defeat, every day, for 50 years. For a man who was fighting a specific, documented physical battle every night, who was bruised according to friar witnesses sworn under oath in beatification proceedings, chose as his primary weapon the one prayer that forces the enemy to relive its own annihilation. He did not choose it randomly. He knew exactly what he was doing. The third element is the specific wound to demonic pride. This is the part Amorth's documented confession illuminates most precisely. The foundational sin of Lucifer, the sin that turned an archangel into a demon, was pride. Not greed, not lust, not rage. Pride. The refusal to serve. The absolute conviction of superiority. And here is what the Rosary does to that pride. It defeats the demon through a creature. Not through God. God is infinitely above the demonic order, and being defeated by God, while painful, does not rupture demonic pride in the specific way that ruptures the foundational sin. Being defeated by God is, in some sense, the condition of every created thing. Being defeated by a woman, a human creature which in the hierarchy of being stands below an angelic nature, is a wound of a completely different order. That is the specific torment Amorth's demon confessed. More afraid when you say the Madonna's name, more humiliated by being beaten by a simple creature. The Rosary does not merely defeat the enemy, it defeats the enemy through the exact mechanism that wounds the sin that made him an enemy. Every Hail Mary is a blow to the head because every Hail Mary is a reminder of exactly who won and exactly who the enemy was defeated by. I need to tell you about a man I had known for 22 years. His name was Father Michael. He had been a year ahead of me at the Athenaeum of Ohio Seminary. We were friends through those years, stayed in contact afterward, and while I went into teaching, he pursued a doctorate in systematic theology at Fordham and spent the rest of his career as a professor. Michael was brilliant. More precisely, he was the kind of intellectually rigorous person who had a very short tolerance for imprecision. We argued frequently about Padre Pio over the years. He was not dismissive of the stigmata, but he treated what he called the popular supernatural apparatus around Padre Pio with frank skepticism, levitation, bilocation, the demonic attacks, and the extravagant claims made for the Rosary as a weapon of spiritual warfare. Michael thought, and he said this to me more than once across 22 years, that the framing of the Rosary as a weapon against demonic forces was folk Catholicism dressed up as theology, a pious narrative layered over a beautiful prayer. He respected the Rosary as the gospel in beads. He found the combat framing, as he put it, theatrical. I let the argument rest. There was nothing I could say that would move him, and I respected his rigor too much to keep trying. Then, in his 61st year, Michael accompanied an exorcist to a formal exorcism session, not from personal conviction, but at the request of his diocesan bishop, who had asked him to serve as a theological consultant on a case the diocese was formally processing. Michael was there as an observer. He was there to take notes and provide theological assessment, nothing more. He called me that night. It was around 10 o'clock. His voice was quiet in a way I had never heard from him before. Not shaken exactly, but different. The voice of someone who has witnessed something they do not yet have adequate framework to contain. He described what he had seen, a middle-aged woman, unremarkable circumstances preceding the session. And then, when the exorcist introduced the rosary into the room, what happened? Michael said, "Ray, the reaction to those beads was not theatrical. It was involuntary. She pulled back from them the way you pull back from something that burns, and the voice that came through her, it named the beads specifically, not the crucifix, not the holy water. The rosary. By name. And the language it used to describe them was not about holiness or sacredness. It described them as a source of pain." He paused for a moment. Then he said, "I owe you an apology for every time I called this superstition. I owe a larger apology to everyone else I said it to." He began praying the rosary the next morning. He told me this with a kind of deliberate simplicity, not dramatic, not effusive. The way a man reports a practical decision made in the face of evidence he can no longer discount. He never stopped. He prayed it every day for the last 2 years of his life. When he died, unexpectedly a cardiac event in his sleep, his rosary was in his hand. Not because someone placed it there. He had fallen asleep praying it. I tell you this, not because Michael was a saint. He was a human being with all the complications that implies. I tell it because Michael was the most intellectually rigorous person I had known across 50 years in Catholic education. And what moved him was not argument, not theology, not devotional persuasion. It was witness, the enemy's own involuntary testimony given under compulsion, in a room that Michael had entered as a skeptic. That changed everything for him. I believe it can change something for you. Now let me give you the protocol. Not an abstract recommendation. What Padre Pio actually modeled, distilled into specific steps you can begin tonight. Step 1. Pray the rosary, standing or kneeling, never lying down. Padre Pio never prayed it lying down. This is not about physical comfort. Posture is a signal, to yourself and to what is spiritually present. Standing or kneeling communicates combat readiness. It is the posture of a soldier at position, not a man retreating into rest. Padre Pio's rosary was not meditative relaxation. It was active warfare. He prayed it on his feet because that is how you fight. Change your posture. Change the signal. Step 2. Before the first Our Father, name the specific target. Not a vague prayer for peace or protection. A specific declaration spoken aloud. I offer this rosary for the destruction of this specific thing in my life and in my family. Name the fear. Name the pattern. Name the person under attack. Name the temptation that has returned for years without resolution. Padre Pio's rosaries were never generic. Every one of his 30 to 50 daily rosaries was directed at something specific. He was fighting something specific. Name your specific thing before you begin. Step 3. Meditate on the mysteries. Do not merely recite. This is the distinction Ripperger draws most sharply. The mechanism he describes, the representation of the incarnation, the forcing of demonic entities to re-experience their own defeat, operates through meditation, not through verbal repetition. The words without the meditation are incomplete. A soldier who carries a rifle but does not aim it is not using the weapon. With each mystery, put yourself inside it. The Annunciation, the angel's voice, Mary's yes the moment God entered flesh. The agony in the garden, Christ's will against his nature, the submission that undid every act of pride. The resurrection, the sealed stone, the soldiers at the gate, the impossibility of what happened on the third day. The enemy does not fear the words alone. It fears the contact with the reality those words point to. Step 4. Pray the Fatima prayer at each decade. O my Jesus, forgive us our sins. Save us from the fires of hell. Lead all souls to heaven, especially those most in need of your mercy. This prayer, revealed by Our Lady herself at Fatima in 1917, is not decorative. It is, in Ripperger's framework, a specific armament, an invocation of mercy against the precise fires the enemy claims. It was not added to the rosary as a pious extra. It was given as part of the weapon. If you have been skipping it, you have been leaving part of the armor behind. Step 5. Keep a properly blessed rosary in every room of your home where you have experienced spiritual disturbance. Not a decorative rosary, a properly blessed one, blessed by a priest using the formal blessing. Padre Pio reportedly gave this counsel in pastoral guidance across decades. A blessed rosary in a room is not an object, it is a presence, a claim. The priestly blessing imparts a real spiritual authority over the object, directing it toward the protection of souls who occupy that space. The physical rosary in the room is the Church's claim on that room. The Church's, and by the decree of Genesis 3, verse 15, Mary's. Step 6. Pray one rosary tonight, for one specific person or situation, not as a habit, not as a routine, as a weapon, deliberately deployed. Choose one person in your family who is under attack, whose situation you cannot fix with natural means, whose struggle has continued without resolution. Pray one complete rosary specifically for them tonight, with every mystery directed at whatever is operating against them. You are not asking for help. You are invoking an authority. There is a difference. Let me close with what the evidence has actually established. You came to this video because the title promised a revelation about a prayer that Satan specifically fears. The revelation is this: he does not merely fear it, he has confessed to it, under duress, multiple times, across 3 centuries, to priests who documented it, in terms precise enough to match across independent accounts separated by 300 years, from exorcists who never read each other's work. Dr. Amorth's case in France in 1710. Our Lady's command at Fatima in 1917, where she named herself by the weapon she was giving. Amorth's 30 years of documented demonic confession in Rome. Rossetti's account from a session this decade in the United States. This is not a tradition. It is testimony, and you own the weapon that produced that testimony. Most Catholics who own a rosary treat it as devotion. Padre Pio treated it as the primary weapon of a nightly battle that left him physically bruised. 30 to 50 full rosaries every day from a man who knew exactly what the prayer was doing, because he had been fighting with it every night for 50 years. The enemy told you, through forced confession against his will to exorcists who wrote it down, exactly why he hates this prayer above all others. He told you the mechanism, the Marian authority established at creation, the representation of the incarnation that forces him to relive his own defeat, the specific wound to his pride at being conquered by a human creature. He told you that every Hail Mary is a blow to his head. He did not want to tell you that, he was compelled. What you do with that testimony is now entirely up to you. Take this with you tonight. God bless you, and stay vigilant.